I was in a place in my life where I had tried to go to college right out of high school.
I've always aspired to be a Marine since the age of 11 when I first saw that inspiring commercial.
I joined the Army, enlisted as a combat medic, 2 tours of duty to Iraq.
By being a resident and also serving in the military for 1 year, I became a citizen.
At first it's nerve-wracking because for me, I don't know about other veterans, but I didn't want to talk about my service to people who wouldn't necessarily understand it.
I'm the only veteran that a significant number of my college friends know. I'm the only veteran that a lot of people in my hometown know. There is a military-civilian divide, and it's everyone's issue.
Rip Van Winkle is what I called myself at work, where it's like I went to sleep for a few months and then woke up and look, everybody's the same. Life had gone on without me, but yet I had had these incredibly different experiences.
Coming back to New York City and literally being thrown into the corporate spaces, it's a culture clash.
Oh boy. The first thing that comes to my mind returning to New York was figuring out the damn parking rules.
I first came back to New York City, I remember the walking pace, right? Like if you're not all the way to the right, you need to get there because somebody's gonna want to walk faster than you because they have somewhere where they need to be.
People seeing me a day after I just got home from the war, nobody knew. Nobody knew who saw me on the street, and there I was experiencing all these different emotions and thoughts.
We weren't veterans when we went in. We weren't veterans when we raised our right hand. We were people volunteering for service, and people do that a lot. It could be the Peace Corps, it could be just being a school teacher in an urban area, it could be somewhere where you're giving a piece of yourself. The only difference is that when we do it, we don't have the option to turn around and come home.
Not to sound too cheesy, but having served in combat and been placed in a position where you have to leave the grand circle of morality where everybody lives in, you have to step outside of that, and you're encouraged to do so, but then you're expected to just fall right back in. And the world just doesn't make sense to us. To anybody who's had to step outside that moral boundary, the world just doesn't make sense to you in those terms anymore.
As veterans, the first question comes up like, how many people did you kill? And I'm like, really?
Did you kill anybody? Did you blow anything up? Did you do anybody? Don't leave with that.
I can't blame them because they're so engulfed with the news, and the news, if it bleeds, it leads. They report horrifying scenes and episodes and incidents. So I guess they can't help but to ask those questions, those obvious questions.
The conversation initially can be a bit rough, and then you kind of break ground and they'll come down from what they think veterans are. You'll kind of elevate their level of thought, and then you kind of even out somewhere in the middle,
War or any human experience is not like it is in the movies. The movies can show, media can show one aspect of somebody's truth. But really it takes getting at, just having a talk with somebody about, wow, I heard you were in Afghanistan. Yeah, I heard you were in Iraq. What was that like? And then listening. And not saying something, to the effect of, oh, was it like this movie? Was it like The Hurt Locker? Was it like Restrepo? Which I like Restrepo, by the way. But like that tells one unit's experience.
The divide exists because of a lack of knowledge. The same reason a divide exists between poor urban communities and police departments, right? There's a lack of knowledge about what one group faces every day living in this community, and a lack of knowledge about what the other group faces every day having to work in this community and kind of being vigilant and on guard at all times.
People are still surprised that I'm a veteran. So, I feel like I don't necessarily get all of the myths because people just don't assume to ask them. Because I've already blown their minds by being an educated female who enlisted in the Army for 10 years, that people get very surprised as it is.
So I've seen that. I've seen both sides where some people think that veterans are, broken, they're addicted to drugs, they're violent, they're scary, some of a caricature of a monster. And then I see the other hand of it when people come across successful veterans and they just assume that, you know, everything's given to us. You're given a pension, you're given a compensation salary, you're given free ride education, and both of those are both equally hurting, and you know, they hurt, honestly. I'm not a monster. I do suffer PTSD. I do have nightmares. I do suffer from the traumas of war, understandably. But nothing has been given to me.
Not everybody is broken. Not everybody has post-traumatic stress. There are a lot of people who do. But most of us are just day-to-day people. And that's like the most important thing to convey is, you know, we're just trying to, it's like if you quit accounting and wanted to get into screenwriting. I mean, you're gonna go through a huge transition period. Ours just happened to involve a uniform and boots and, you know, being told what to do every day. And a lot more camaraderie than I think you would have in accounting.
I wholeheartedly believe that civilians need to be a part of that conversation and a part of that development. The more civilians that get involved and step into our world and help us to step out of our world and back into communities, the easier transitions will be for veterans who are returning home.
That's why it's very important when they offer veteran support. You can do more than just say, thank you for your service. You can grab a veteran and say, hey, how are you? How are you doing? What can I do for you? Is there anything I can do for you?
Veterans have such potential as entrepreneurs, as change agents here in New York City and beyond, as empowered citizens. We vote more, we volunteer more, we're more likely to be business owners, we're self-starters. We have a wealth of training and experience that that we bring to the table in addition to whatever we've done on the civilian side, and we're energized by opportunities to serve and make things better.
The question I wish civilians would ask me is, how can I help?
I wish people would ask me what I took away from the service. Many people ask, why did you join, especially after 9/11? Many people ask, why didn't you, stay in 20 years with the economy the way it was? But I think if people were to ask me what I took away from the military, then I'd be able to speak much more eloquently about what the service was for me, what I did in the service, what I learned while in the service, how I interacted with people, not only my fellow veterans, but people from all over the world. I feel like that's a much more conducive point of conversation, or a way of beginning a conversation.
But these programs that draw in everyone in the community are what's important, and not falling into our own little eddies and these little whirlpools that we create as human beings and our own little tribal mentality, and being able to reach out and talk to somebody regardless of what they did for 4, 10, 20 years. What are they going to do for the next 20 years is much more important, and we can all be a piece of where that goes with each other's lives.